Imagine they made an actual good G.I. Joe movie. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to cast it. I need your help, too, because I couldn't figure out a couple of these. If you could help me out in the comments below, who would you get to play Shipwreck? I mean, we need Shipwreck. I could not figure out who would be the best Shipwreck. But I've cast the rest, okay? I mean, I'm fan casting, so I'm like, who would be the ideal person for all these? And I want to know what you think, too. You know, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? Who would you cast instead? What characters am I missing? Now, I'm not going to cast every character in G.I. Joe. This video would be 7 hours long if I tried to do that. I also think that we have to look at it as you wouldn't introduce every character in the first movie. You'd want to start off slow and then build, right? You want to start off with your iconic characters, and you want to save some of the great characters for later. Like, I'm not going to start off with Serpentor in the mix and Dr. Mindbender. I think those are characters you bring in a third or a fourth movie. I think I'm not going to start off with characters like Agent Helix. I think is somebody I would probably bring in a much later as a sort of guest protagonist for a movie. You're going to start off with the main characters and the main storylines, and and then build on movie past movie. So I'm thinking about movie 1, really. Who would you want to start off with? And what I'm imagining this movie would be like, if it was a good movie, which we're not going to get, because we know they're going to give us another half-assed. It could be such a great movie. That's the thing that drives me insane, is that this could be like one of the best movie series of all times. I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings mixed with, Mission Impossible, mixed with Saving Private Ryan, mixed with Star Wars. I mean, that's what you could get. Mixed with Road Warrior, that's what you could get if you made a really great G.I. Joe movie. I think it could be one of those things that blows other franchises out of the water and kicks G.I. Joe off to be something on par with the great IPs of all time if you did it right, which they're not gonna do probably. But hey, I gotta admit, I talking shit back in the day. There was a time when I said, they'll never make a really great superhero movie, and they made a bunch of them. Now they are terrible, but we had to slog through a bunch of shitty versions of superhero movies before we get to that incredible Iron Man movie, which kicked off the MCU. So it's possible. I don't think we're gonna see a great G.I. Joe movie in a while. Here's my take on what a great G.I. Joe movie might look like and who we should cast. First thing I would say is I would have it be very much like cross-cutting between several plots. I wouldn't be focused on one team like G.I. Joe Retaliation did with Small Team. It'd have to be pretty big scale. I mean, maybe it's a miniseries like Band of Brothers and not a movie. But if it's a movie, it would have to be 2.5, 3 hours. It'd have to be big in scope, and I would stick with these stories. And so this will tell you who we have to cast, right? So for me, you would have an overarching story, which would be with Hawk, the commander of the team, militarily trying to being outmaneuvered by Cobra Commander. And so that would be just the overplot, not so much character driven, and that you would need Hawk, the second in command, which would be Stalker, the third in command, which would be Duke, and then maybe General Flag, and the jugglers, which if you're not familiar with the jugglers, are generals of various that may not be on the level, that cause problems for the team and for General Flag and Hawk. And then, General Flag dies pretty early, so he might be one of the expendable characters. You're gonna have some sort of death, and so that's where I would start. I would have those characters. The next, I would split the story up into basically 3 stories, and I would have at the lead of those 3 stories the 3 couples, and the 3 couples are Snake Eyes and Scarlet, Flint and Lady J, and Destro and the Baroness. I think that's where the story is. And basically what I would imagine the Snake Eyes Scarlet storyline would be really about Storm Shadow and the, blood feud between Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, and would get into a little bit of the Arashikage lore and have those two in conflict for the first movie. And there you would need Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and Storm Shadow. Then I would swap over and have Flint leading the field team with Lady J, and that field team would be the heavy hitter. So we'd want to cast the real important, like a small unit. Now, you can't have every character in the world in it, but we would want a handful of main characters, and at the top of that list would be Roadblock. I would want Gung Ho, and then, Quick Kick, Bazooka, Alpine, a handful of others. And you'd have little minor characters here and there that would be there but not be such an important part of the story, just sort of showing up quickly in cameos, and that maybe emerge as bigger characters later in other movies. And then the other plot line would be, I would use Destro as your sort of doorway into Cobra. I would have it like be his first day as their weapons supplier, and being brought into the fold as also sort of mercenary and part of the command, and not really liking what's going on, but then falling for the Baroness. And so you have Cobra Commander manipulating Destro, using the Baroness, and that drama being core to the story, and Destro being somewhat of a conflicted character. So those are basically the three major storylines that I would like to see, and you would jump between those, and they would intersect, of course, too, because it should be big in scope. It should be big in scope, and it should cross-cut between characters. I mean, it's kind of like how Rise of Cobra did the same. It did cross-cut between Snake Eyes and his storyline, and then the stupid guys in the jumpsuits, and then the overall story. It did that badly. We would do it well. So who do we cast in these roles? Let's go down the line. We could be here for a while. So the first we would need in that overall story, we would want our high command. So let's cast that. And for Hawk, I would want a real iconic action movie star to bring him in for one, because Hawk would be an older character. He would be an older guy. And so we could bring in somebody like Kurt Russell would be amazing, right? We get Kurt Russell to come in and play General Hawk as a weathered General Hawk. I think he's in his 60s now, but he's still good. He looks good. He's in good shape. And there was always this moment in that play for me where you'd have Hawk being the general and sort of being resigned to the desk, and at the end he has to come out and actually whoop some ass, sort of like in Independence Day when the president gets in a plane and flies off with the force, and that's such a satisfying moment. You'd have something like that. Next to him, you would have basically most of the conflict, most of the conversation would be happening with Stalker, who would be one of the main focuses of the movie. And for that, I think Idris Elba would be great. Apparently he was in talks to play a character. I can only imagine that character would have to be Stalker, because he's not a big enough dude to play Roadblock. You just need he's a big dude, but you need like a massive guy to play Roadblock, so that doesn't make any sense. He must have been in line to play Stalker, and that's dead on perfect casting, and he's a great actor. And next, Duke. I mean, Joel Kinnaman, I think is a good. He's basically played Duke in the Suicide Squad movies, and I think he'd be fine. I wouldn't make Duke that much of a focal point of the movie, frankly. Comic book, he never was very big character. He was really relegated to side duty. And that's where I would keep him. I'd keep him as field commander. I'd keep him as part of one of the guys in the room, but not even the most important guy in the room. I make that guy. Or even the second most important guy in the room. I would give that to Stalker. And then you need a general flag, and for that you just need a big icon that's a little older than Kurt Russell or around the same age, and you bring him in, you probably kill him off. Maybe like Tommy Lee Jones or something. Somebody who has some gravitas. Now we're getting into the team, the main team. And here's who I think we should have in the main team. And I think you could honestly argue for a variety of characters here, but we got to keep it manageable, but I wouldn't want it to make it too small either. I would want to have a lot of them, even if they're just in the background. So here's who I got. I want Roadblock. I want Gung Ho. I want Spirits, without a doubt. Tunnel Rat, Shipwreck, Wild Bill, and Airborne. And I'm also going to advocate for throwing in Shooter. Now, Shooter, if you don't know much about Shooter, why I would throw Shooter in here is that Shooter was put in as the 14th G.I. Joe in one panel of issue 1, named after Jim Shooter. And then later, Larry Hama wrote in a comic G.I. Joe Declassified, brought in that there was another G.I. Joe on a mission and helped in this mission, and it's Shooter. She's a female sniper, and I think you'd bring in Shooter because she was technically in canon of G.I. Joe in the first mission. This would be the first movie, and we could use a couple more women. So I think it would be fun to throw in a couple more women. I know some of you are going to complain about strong female characters and you know how they're shoving diversity up our ass in movies, and you can complain all you want about, but this is not that, right? Because G.I. Joe was always diverse from the get-go. It was diverse. It's actually the most diverse IP of all time. People from all over, because they wanted boys of all kinds or all types to see themselves in the figure. It also is representative of the military. The military is extremely diverse, right? So I think it's not shoehorned in. We're not shoehorning shit in. It's actually a natural fit for this to be diverse, and we would just play it up. We would use that. We would lean into it, and it will be natural. So I don't want to hear any complaining about how that shit is ruining movies.
Put a chick in it, make her gay.
So I think I would throw Shooter in there because it'd be nice to have a female sniper. And so let's cast some of these. Okay, so who would I have for Roadblock? Well, Roadblock, really, you need a big, strong black man. Mike Coulter, Luke Cage, Power Man. He played Luke Cage. And he's a great actor. I thought that series was really underrated. This is part of the Marvel Netflix series and dark stuff that they made early on, and there's a couple great seasons of Luke Cage, and I thought he did great. And he's just a huge, massive, muscular dude. He could be good. I'd also think Terry Crews would be fun. And sometimes with this casting, maybe I'm gonna throw something out at you from the past, right? So like it might not be. I mean, it's all fantasy anyway, right? So now this is a fantasy cast. We're going back in time here. He couldn't play it anymore. He wouldn't make it wouldn't make the cut. He's way too old. It wouldn't work. But back in the day, Jesse Ventura would have made an awesome Gung Ho, right? I'm thinking about Jesse Ventura in Predator. First of all, he is a great actor. He's super talented. He was an actual Navy SEAL, not a Marine, but a Navy SEAL. But he's also a brash, kind of obnoxious, tough talking, really funny guy. He's huge. He's got the right mustache, and to me, he looks like a great Gung Ho. As for his Gung Ho now, I mean, I bet you there's a pro wrestler. You tell me. I don't want to follow pro wrestling anymore. I did when I was a kid. I don't follow anymore. That might make a good Gung Ho, but I can't think of one. Can you think of one? Put it in the comments below, please.
You're bleeding, man. I ain't got time to bleed.
For Spirit, Iron Knife would have to be a major character in this line, one of the greats. And for Spirit, Iron Knife, there's a Zahn McClarnon. I think Spirit, Iron Knife, Zahn McClarnon from Reservation Dogs would make a great Spirit Iron Knife. And there was a really great storyline in one of the Larry Hama books where you had Spirit and he was sort of paired up with Airborne, and Airborne had lost all touch. The Airborne is like, I think Spirit Iron Knife has leaning into his Native American identity and heritage, right? And Airborne was not so in touch with it, and so there was something about the way that Spirit was bringing him more in touch with it. I think there's something to play with there that could be really interesting. I think also Airborne, I would keep him probably a minor character, Airborne and Wild Bill, but you need people to airdrop us in and out. You need somebody to run the Dragonfly. So I think it'd be natural that they would just be characters that would show up for a little bit and maybe they get some story eventually. For Wild Bill, I would love to see Sam Elliott play Wild Bill. I mean, he is the cowboy guy, right? So he's known for playing cowboys. I think he'd make a great Wild Bill. And for his partner, Airborne, I would use Dakota Beavers, who was in Prey and Killers of the Flower Moon. He's a young guy. You make a perfect airborne. We get Native American heritage and pair him up with Spirit for a couple scenes where they can contrast against each other. So for Shooter, who would I play Shooter if you're bringing in this new character? Supposed to be one of the original Joes now. In the original storyline, I think killing her off is probably not a good idea to do in this first movie, because even though that is what happens in the comic book, because, you know, she's one of the only female characters and the only black female character. I don't know that we want to just like kill that person off. Seems like a really bad horror movie cliche to have the only person you kill off be a black woman, right? That's like every horror movie ever. Now for her, I think Megan Good. Maybe it's just because I think Megan Good is really hot. I gotta admit, big crush on Megan Good. I think she's a really strong actress. I loved her in the movie Brick. I think she's got a great look. She's physically strong, as you saw in Anchorman 2, when she beat the shit out of the Anchorman.
Here comes the Toledo Express. All aboard! Run, no!
So I think she would make a good Shooter. For Tunnel Rat, we need Tunnel Rat, because Tunnel Rat is one of the favorites. He's one of the main characters. He's one of the characters we love, so bring him in. And there's an actor named D.Y. Sao. I might be saying that wrong. I apologize. D.Y. Sao is how it looks. And he's a martial artist. Now, he wouldn't be doing martial arts, because Tunnel Rat is not a martial artist, as far as I know. He's more of a scrappy guy, fits in tunnels. But this guy is a strong actor. He's got a great look. And he's small, right? He's physically strong, but he's small, so he would fit the Tunnel Rat look. In addition to those characters, I would throw in a bunch of Joes that would just show up for a scene or two. They would be, minor. They would show up either like operating a vehicle or in some sort of vehicle battle scene. And they really probably see them on the side. And there I would have Clutch. I would have Cover Girl. I think you'd need some sort of aerial battle, so I would want Ace in there. And just to have a couple of other bodies, it'd be good to have Grunt, Rock and Roll, Flash, Alpine, and Bazooka. Now, not everybody has to be, a major Hollywood actor, so I don't think we need to go and cast all of those people. So let's just throw out a couple names. I think a couple of them can be just nobodies. We've never seen this person before. This is their first time. Although the movie will be like $1 billion, right? So we want to make some stars out of this, so we don't need to have everybody be a major hit. So I would say, so I'm just going to throw the ones out that I see as like being a cool casting choice. Obviously for Cover Girl, you need a supermodel. You need somebody. She can't look like just a pretty girl. Like, we're going to get a beautiful girl to play Shooter. We're probably going to get a beautiful girl to play all of them. Believe it or not, that's the way movies are, right? I think for Scarlett, we got a beautiful girl, but not a supermodel. So for this, we need a supermodel. She has to be that. So Emily Ratajkowski, who you may have seen, she was in Gone Girl, absolutely stunning. She was like a Sports Illustrated supermodel looking girl. That would be who you want for a Cover Girl. She's not going to be a main character. She's going to be eye candy. As far as Bazooka and Alpine, I always love that comic duo, and I'd love to see those characters represented and have some fun and use his comic. Maybe even using stand-up comics would be really fun. Like, how fun would it be to have Dave Chappelle play Alpine? Would he do it? Probably not. Man's one of ludicrously rich, doesn't need to play that. So let's say we have that, and we have like for Bazooka, we got to get like a big lug of a guy, like a big lug comedian, like Bert Kreischer or something. I don't know if he can act, but throw a mustache on him, and I can see him playing Bazooka. Team him up with, some sort of some comedian. Maybe not. Maybe Dave Chappelle's too big. Maybe he's not going to go spelunking. Similar on that, I do think we would, like I said before, we're going to want to have one of the segments of the movie would take place in an environment. And for me, and in each movie, we would want to jump around the world and globetrot the way that the Mission Impossible movies or a Bond movie or even like Star Wars goes from planet to planet, biome to biome. You'd want to do the same thing. That would be very cool. And that's how you could bring in characters like Dusty and Rakondo and Snow Job and, nautical characters like Cutter or Keelhaul. That would be what you'd want to, the way you'd want to get that in there. And for the first movie, I would want to do snow environment, battle in the Arctic. So I'm gonna bring in Snow Job. And who plays Snow Job? I think Bill Burr should play Snow Job. Hear me out. He did Star Wars. He was in The Mandalorian. And I don't know if he can ski. Kind of needs to be able to ski. But if he can ski, he's got the red hair. Just grow him a beard. And remember, Snow Job is sort of like a ball buster. He's like a con man. When we first meet Snow Job in the comic book, he's screwing with another character. He's trying to con him out of something just to bust his balls, right? So Bill Burr is like the king of all ball busters. I'd love to see him, firing up a sniper rifle and skiing down a hill, wasting vipers, and for a scene or two, and play Snow Job. Now another one-off scene that we might throw in would be Doc, and you could use Joe Morton, who's a little bit maybe too old, but he always struck me as he's got that sort of gentleness to him that he might play a good Doc. Almost looks like Doc. I think that's a good pick. Now, we can't forget the bad guys. So let's get into the bad guys here. Who are we going to use? We want to have a good group of bad guys, and led by, of course, Cobra Commander, Destro, and the Baroness. But in this first movie, we're not going to have every character because it would be a waste of time. You wouldn't be able to fit them in. We're going to save some of these characters for next movie. But here's who I think I would like to see. The first thing, you have to have the Crimson Twins. The Crimson Twins run the business, and I think even though they're not in the first year of G.I. Joe, the lore really depends on them. So I'd bring in the Crimson Guard and the Crimson Twins and use them as a sort of intrigue plot that maybe we have Flint and Lady J go on, and in maybe an undercover war sense. And that, I think, who would play a really good Tomax and Xamot Paoli? And I think Bill Skarsgård. Okay, so now if you saw John Wick 4, Bill Skarsgård basically played one of the Paoli brothers. So imagine two of them, one with a scar on his face, and now we've got a really good. He brings this sort of like effete European trash energy to him. He's kind of pretty, he's kind of scary, and that's how I think the Paoli brothers should be presented. So I think that would be a really good pick. I'd also bring in the Crimson Guard, maybe even the Fred character, who's like one of the main Crimson Guard. I'd like to see just a couple scenes of that. For Fred, I would pick Patrick Wilson. He's got that everyman look, kind of gentle, kind of everyman, handsome, normal looking dude. Could be a dad, could be kind, could be tricking you in the way he just looks like a normal guy, but he's in his closet at home. He's got a red Crimson Guard suit. I would have Major Blood be one of those villains. And now Major Blood, I would take Charlton Copley. He was in District 9, and he's also played a bunch of really great villains. He's actually quite great at being a villain.
You think you can get through me? Come on, Max! Come on! I'm just getting started.
He's not Australian, he's New Zealander, but that's close enough for me. I think that's a close enough fit. I'd actually throw at Dr. Venom too. Now, Dr. Venom is a character of the comic book. I don't think we're ready for Dr. Mindbender. He's for a sequel. So I would put Dr. Venom in this first movie, and I'd probably kill him off by movie 2. I would say by movie 2, Dr. Venom is dead. But for that, I think Ben Mendelsohn, who was the villain in Rogue One, he would make a really good Dr. Venom. You need somebody to do some experiments, maybe capture Snake Eyes, put him in the brainwave scanner. That's got to be a scene, I think, in this first movie, and have him break out. And then we kill him off pretty early on in movie 2 when we bring in Quinn. the Eskimo. But I'm not going to get there because that's movie 2, and there's too many characters in the fucking thing already, so I'm going off tangent. For my villains, of course, you cannot have a G.I. Joe movie without Zartan. And if you're going to have the Zartan, you better bring in them damn Dreadnoks, right? This is a mistake they made before. They brought in Zartan, but no Dreadnoks. It's not fun. The Dreadnoks are such a fun element. Why would you leave them out? Even if they just show up for a scene to wreck some shit and, have a fight in a biker bar or something and get their ass beat. I think that you bring them in for this first movie. So I don't know that you need to get major actors to play the Dreadnoks. Let me know if you think of any that you think would fit some good Dreadnok energy. A couple of things to throw out. Maybe Alfie Allen would make a good Buzzer. Alfie Allen played Reek in the Game of Thrones, and I can see him playing Buzzer, looking clean cut with a ponytail and rocking a chainsaw. Similarly, from Game of Thrones, Ripper, we have Christopher Hivju. I don't know how to say his name. Got a wild face, and I can imagine him playing Ripper. I think he would make a pretty good Ripper. Now, Zartan, one of the hardest to cast, and I think I got a good selection. I think I got a really good pick here. And the actor is Sam Witwer. And if you don't know Sam Witwer, you might not, because he's not in a lot. But what Sam Witwer is the guy that does the voice for Darth Maul in the Clone Wars series. So he's got this incredible booming villain voice that he can, roll out on command.
Okay, hold on. Okay. All right.
I can see him in my mind's eye. Kenobi. Kenobi!
He's also he's a handsome guy. He's a built guy. I can imagine Zartan being a bit striking looking, and his physicality fits, but I don't think it really works. And if you just look at a picture of him, it don't go work. But if you look at the picture and you hear this voice, that to me is Zartan. I think that's a really good pick for Zartan, in my opinion. If you wanted to throw Xandar and Zorana, maybe it's too early. I don't think you need them. Maybe you can throw them in a second movie. You tell me who you think should play them. So now we're at our big 3 here. We've got to cast the Baroness, Destro, and Cobra Commander. And we're not going to do the shitty-ass job they did in The Rise of Cobra, okay? I detested that movie and don't mind the other 2 as much. That movie is trash. But who I would pick for the Baroness, and okay, I get a lot of people love the casting of the Baroness in the in Rise of Cobra, cause I get it. She's a hot British woman in leather pants. How do you not like a hot British woman in leather pants? It's just good. But I think she's wrong. First of all, she shouldn't be British. She should be Eastern European. I never got the sense that the Baroness, it actually says European, so it doesn't really say that she comes from any particular country. We know if she comes from, but I think when they say European, that doesn't mean France and Italy and England. When we're talking about somebody says European, what they mean is probably one of those weird ass countries that you forget exist. You know what I mean? Like Estonia or something. I think or Eastern Europe. I think she's from an Eastern European country. Probably a made up one, but I think she should have, and I think Eastern European women have very specific features. They're often really beautiful, and that's what the mail order bride catalogs show me anyway. So for my pick, might be a little too old now. So this is more like a fantasy cast back in the day. I'm not sure how old she is right now. Femke Jensen, right? But I'm thinking back in the day, or even a few years ago, she would have been the absolute perfect Baroness. Maybe she's still, I don't know how old she is. I can't put in my head at how old she is right now. If she's in her 60s, that might be a little too old for the Baroness. But she's got a perfect look. She's absolutely stunning. She's a great actress. She, nailed it with Xenia Onatopp and GoldenEye as being sort of frightening and being able to wield a weapon and being terrifying and could bring the depth to the character too, because I've seen her do that in other movies. So she would be my number one pick for the Baroness at some point. Maybe it's too late for that, and I'm not really sure who would replace her in my head. As far as Destro, my favorite character next to Snake Eyes, who would you cast? And this is a hard one. This is a tough one. You need now the movies gave us Christopher Eccleston, who he's Scottish, he's got the villainy look to him. To me, he's a little small, little too wiry, a little too weak looking. I think Destro's a big dude. Destro's strong. He's physically powerful. Destro is extremely dangerous. Destro is charismatic. I think you need a better looking guy than Christopher Eccleston. I think you need a stronger presence. So here's who I think we should play him. Tom Hardy. I'm a big Tom Hardy fan. I love Tom Hardy. He already did Bane, where he donned a head mask and an accent. He's also, I think he's Welsh, so probably not hard for him to transition his accent to a Scottish accent, and I think he could bring a lot of depth to the character. He's one of our great actors. He's also a very muscular in shape, very sexual energy, powerful actor, and I think that's who you need for Destro. So that's my pick for Destro. He's not allowed to do a stupid funny voice like he did for Bane, though. He's just got to do a straight up Sean Connery impression. Great. And I would make him like a protagonist almost. I would make his storyline running the Cobra segment of the story and put some depth to it. He's always been a conflicted character. That's what he's so great about him. He's got honor. He respects the G.I. Joe team. He respects them. He's not in it for evil. He don't want to dominate the world. He's in it for money. He's just, which I guess is evil, but he's just in it for himself. He's a capitalist. That's it. He just wants some money. He wants to be with the Baroness. So that's my pick for Destro. You tell me what yours is. For Cobra Commander, this is a tough one. And I think you could go a million different ways with this. I hate the Cobra Commander of the cartoon. I do not want to see anything like that. I would make him like the comic book Cobra Commander, who is cold, charismatic, absolutely terrifying, and brilliant. And for him, you could use somebody like Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy has that charisma, is a real powerful actor, and I think would bring a lot to the role. And you could believe that man building a cult, building his organization. If you want to go more the screaming, crazy voiced version too, I think you could also use Ewan Rion. I don't know how to say his name, okay, people? I'm just going to say I don't know how to say it. But he played Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones. Now, he's got a scratchy voice here and an insane villain energy, and he's scary, and he could bring that menacing presence, and I think his voice maybe fits the cartoon, gives you that note of the cartoon without going the route. Like, I know, like, he's not surrendering. There's not going to be any scenes where he surrenders. There's not going to be any of that bullshit. I don't want any...
Retreat! Retreat! Retreat!
He should be cold, calculating, terrifying the whole way through. The file card says he's the most dangerous man alive. That's who he should be in the movies. That would make an ultimate villain, and that's what you'd want to see. And so that's our Cobra. That's our Cobra team. So now this leaves for the overarching plot, Flint and Lady J. Now, you could go a bunch of different ways with this, but I think John Hamm would make a great Flint. I think he looks like Flint. He carries the same Flint energy. And we haven't seen John Hamm in an action role. I don't know if he's up for it, but I think he would have that strong presence. As far as Lady J, I wouldn't go the route Retaliation went, where they made her. I love Adrienne Padalecki. She's absolutely gorgeous. There's nothing to hate on about this scene here.
I have to call you back. Yeah,
I mean, can't complain about this woman being cast in this role and that movie. She's just too young. She's too young. She also, to me, does not feel like Lady J at all. Lady J is described as, having studied in England in theater and Shakespearean theater companies and having a slight little Irish lilt to her voice. So I would go with somebody who probably is English or Irish. So for that. So in that you might use Haley Atwell, who played Captain America's girlfriend, Agent Carter, and is also in the new Mission Impossible movies. And we know she can do the action. She would also, I think she could fit the part really well. We're also going in now another route. We could take Carrie Coon, who kind of looks like her to me. To me, looks like the figure is maybe the only reason. I also think Carrie Coon is a fantastic actress who I've loved in just about everything I've seen. So I think those would be great picks for Lady J. All right, now going to the final crew here. Like I said, there's these 3 subplots that are all moving together, and our final subplot would be, my focus on it is that Snake Eyes in the comic book has always been the focal character, and I think I would make that plot running through the whole series, where he doesn't have to carry every movie. You've got Flint and Lady J and Roadblock and Stalker and Hawk carrying the movie, but there is this through line where we're cutting back to him, and he's not just ninja. He's not just Ninja Snake Eyes. He has a plot. He has a history and a tragic past. He's got his relationship with Scarlet. He's got the blood feud with Storm Shadow, and that would be running throughout the entire series as a through line for what I would see as, I think it's got to be 5 movies. I don't think it can't be, it's not a trilogy. It's too big for a trilogy. It's got to be at least 5 movies. More than 5 is probably unruly, so that's what I would say. 5 movie series. And so for that, you need obviously Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, and Scarlet. And this is going to be real easy because for Scarlet, I think the perfect pick is the one they picked in the last movie. That movie, Snake Eyes Origins, I do not love the movie. I don't hate it. I think it was wrong as a G.I. Joe movie. I think it was wrong as a Snake Eyes movie. I don't think you should make a Snake Eyes Origins movie. That's my biggest problem is Snake Eyes is a mysterious character that we watch and wonder about. And when you start your new series off with the origin of the mystery character, it ruins the series. So you can't do that. That should be like late in the game. So that movie was all wrong. Brought in too much bullshit fantasy element. I don't want, magic rocks and giant snakes in a G.I. Joe movie. I think you want to keep on the border of science fiction where you're bringing in some science fiction elements, some fantasy elements that are just believable, but not stretching your believability. So you don't need it. There's giant vehicles and aircraft battles and tanks and explosions and ninjas. You do not need an element of magic rocks and bullshit in a G.I. Joe movie. You can just go with what the elements that are already there, and it's fascinating enough. But the couple things they got right in that was some of the cast. Samara Weaving was the perfect Scarlet. I loved her portrayal in every scene she was in. I was like, yes, give me more of this. If this is what the movie was, I would have loved the movie. Similarly to that, who would I cast as Storm Shadow? And I think Andrew Koji really nailed it. I think he was perfect because Storm Shadow, the Storm Shadow in Retaliation got him wrong, which is they just got a very good martial artist who looked the part and they had him fighting. And he was a great martial artist, but not an actor. And he didn't have that depth. And what's interesting about Storm Shadow is not just that he's this badass ninja. What's interesting about Storm Shadow is this sort of tragic, I think he can't get his shit together. You know what I mean? Like he's broken and he can't overcome his tragic past. He's tortured enough to become a goon for this, terrorist organization just to get revenge. He's obsessed with revenge. He's constantly screwing up. He's constantly causing the deaths of the people he loves. If you read Master Apprentice in the IDW series, you'll see that continuing. And so there's a tragedy to him. And I think Andrew Koji is a very strong actor. I love him in the show Warrior. I think he looks the part. I think he can do the martial arts and the sword play. And he just nailed it for me. He was great. So I would go with that casting right there. And for the big guys, for Snake Eyes, who do we cast? Who cares? He's a dude behind a mask. What are you going to cast? Fucking Royal Shakespeare Company greatest actor? No. He doesn't speak. He's got no face. I don't care who plays him. So the only things I think you should have in the Snake Eyes, the guy playing Snake Eyes, is he should be kind of physically strong. And not huge man, but a physically strong man. He should be really, really good at moving his body. So in some way, right? He was a martial artist, a great martial artist. And I know it might be great if he's an actor for the little nuances of movement, but he doesn't have to act. What I would not cast, who I did not cast in him in the role, is Henry Golding. I think Henry Golding was wrong. I don't think Henry Golding was wrong because he's Asian. I don't, you can have that debate. I don't want to have it. I don't want. I've heard it a million times. I think you could find an Asian guy that would fit the Snake Eyes role and it would be okay. And you could be angry that they race swapped him. And I get it, but I'm not going there. And I don't want to have this conversation. I think Henry Golding was wrong because one, he's fucking British, right? And he didn't even try an American accent. And G.I. Joe's American, right? And he didn't have the size. He didn't look the right size to me. And then I hated everything they did with his character. But who could play Snake Eyes? Anybody can play Snake Eyes. Anybody who can, throw a couple kicks and is in decent shape can play. And actually, you'd be pretty great shape. Can play Snake Eyes. So I don't care. I would love to hear what you think they should do with it. I'd love to hear why you hated my casting choices. I would love to hear why you liked my casting choices. I would love to hear your casting choices. And I also need you to help me out. Who the fuck would play Shipwreck? Who would you get? I could not think of who would play Shipwreck. But again, it's got to be somebody who's smarmy, has like a smarmy energy, like almost a Han Solo-like energy to him. And he's going to look the part. I just could not find an actor other than Jack Nicholson in the movie The Last Detail from 1970, whatever.
Bro, give this man a beer.
Let's talk about it in the comments, and please subscribe and like and ring the stupid bell. I got to say this shit. I know it's annoying. I don't like it. You can check off. You probably clicked off the video at this point. I can't blame you if you haven't.